guys, I'm making an announcement. It's just to announce that I'm going to do a song tonight, but it's a special song, I think, to me somehow, for a couple reasons. Um, and so I'm going live to announce it rather than just doing it on a short. Um, Life is one of my haters named Bizarvies is actually starting to back me in his comments at least. He likes the workout stuff I did at Powerhouse Gym, and maybe I'll do more of that. It's easy for me. I'm already fit, so what's the difference, right? But he also suggested Bon Jovi, and I was already thinking of doing Bad Medicine, so I got back to him and said, how about Bad Medicine? But he goes, no, dude, Living on a Prayer. And I was like, well, now we're moving from the periphery toward the center of 80s experience in music and just 80s experience, period. If you lived in the 80s, there's little chance you didn't know Living on a Prayer, or hadn't heard it, or just meant nothing to you, or you just didn't know what it was. That just very successful and also not pretentious, and also everyone in the band looked good. They all looked like rock stars. And if you didn't want to be John Bon Jovi, then you probably weren't from this planet in the 80s or something like that. I mean, the guy he's the Robert Plant of the 80s to me. Maybe Jim Morrison in the 60s, Robert Plant in the 70s, and Bon Jovi in the 80s. So now I'm going to try to do Bon Jovi, and I'd be stupid if I took that lightly. In fact, I'm going live just to announce that I'm going to do Living on a Prayer. I was glad he suggested that, Bizarvies. I've always believed in doing the hard stuff first, going from periphery to the center rather than vice versa. I don't starting with it and then working on to the extremities. I believe in doing everything else and then move by doing probably the biggest rock and roll heavy metal song in the 80s. I mean, let's just say it's the Stairway to Heaven of the 80s. So I'm going to try to do that tonight. By tonight, I mean before tomorrow morning, LOL. So if I do it after midnight, and that's technically tomorrow, to me that's still tonight. I'm a musician. I get 2 or 3 hours of sleep at a time, and probably you get 1 or 2 sessions a night. And then once in a while, I get a session of 5 or 6 hours just to make up for the sleep I've had, as I just said, for a few days in a row. I sleep well, but I don't sleep a lot. I prefer waking. I prefer being alive and active and being up. But then, everybody has to sleep, and I do sleep very well. So let me do it tonight at some point. I have Slippery When Wet at home. It also came to me by Bizarvies. So hint to any of you guys out there that want to somehow put the idea in my head to do something, just suggest it to me, because I believe in going with the flow in the universe, and when something comes to me, I just go with the flow. So if it's something you want me to do, just put it in my court by suggesting it, and then it's on me. And if I like the idea, and there's a good chance I'll do it. So that's just a tip for anyone that wants to suggest anything for me to do with whatever. So Living on a Prayer, holy crap. If I'd have started there, it would have been stupid, right? You guys get that? I mean, if I just would have done Living in a Prayer 3 years ago when I started my channel, it would have been totally ridiculous. But I've done a lot of things, and I've searched a lot of the periphery, and I think I've got to the point where I can and should and will do Living with a Prayer. And to toot John Bon Jovi's horn even a little more, he was one of the few rockers that didn't get burned out on drugs. He's one of the few rockers that still looks good today. He's one of the few rockers that still has basically most of his hair today. I would totally respect the guy if I met him. I would be like, sir, what would you like? So I love Bon Jovi. I always have. I just don't. You don't bring up the obvious, Kind of like when Eddie Van Halen talks about his biggest guitar influence being Eric Clapton. Well, that's because it's obvious that Jimi Hendrix was the guitar player that influenced everybody, but Eddie already knew that, so that's why he talked about Clapton. Well, it's obvious that I love Bon Jovi, so I talk about Rat and Dokken and And of course I do talk about my main bands like Van Halen and Ozzy and Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin. But when it comes to Bon Jovi, it's assumed. But now it's kind of like what Sammy said in this 1986 Live Without a Net tour with Van Halen to support the 5150 album, which was the first #1 album for Van Halen that it ever had. He said when he introduced Jump, he said, I'm not going to go on about this because it's like a lame idea, you know. Some things don't need to be said, and that's how I feel about Bon Jovi, and that's how I feel about Living on a Prayer, and that's how I feel about doing Living on a Prayer. I love you guys. Peace, rock and roll.